Okay, number one on the agenda, reading of the minutes of the previous meeting.
I have no problem, accept the minutes.
Second?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna hold off on the presentation of bills and accounts until Joanne can audit those toward the end. Are we expecting the mayor today?
No, we're not.
Oh,
Today
okay.
is he has to light the match for the burning of Kingston.
Oh, okay.
Yes. He's out there lighting that match as we speak.
You just keep trying to burn it down. It just keeps coming back.
So,
Okay, moving on then, Cooper Lake improvements.
we're at a point where I think tonight, I would like for the board, if they're willing to do it, select the project that we would like Greg to begin designing. He has, once he knows what project, he can, by next month, he can provide us with a schedule that we can review and then submit to DEC. And at the same time, he would give us a quote for their design work.
Okay, so the first thing is figuring out
Right. The first order of business would be to,
what we want to do.
excuse me,
Okay, so we had that,
hello?
special meeting where
Hey,
Greg went over, everything on Monday, September 25th. And he made a recommendation, I guess it's almost like a hybrid of what he had submitted or proposed before. So are there any particular questions? Or,
I thought that was a good way to proceed, to not, go overboard with expense, but still be prepared while we're in there doing some of this work to go ahead and make the dam modifications for the higher pool raise, right?
Yeah, I
Right.
agree. I think it's important that we plan for increased capacity if needed. I think that's a really important thing that we need to think about for the future. What do you guys think?
yeah, I mean, I was actually gonna ask him about that before he proposed that hybrid option. So,
The spillway's an issue no matter what. That's a safety issue, right?
Spill-
Or it's just
That's
a,
necessary,
it just
yeah,
has to be
state
done.
mandated.
Do all the things necessary to be done at this point.
Yeah, and the intake has to be
And if you do, the intake has to be done,
done, right.
because, during what little bit measure of control that we had there in terms of taking water from different elevations, and we never had a lot, so it's not like we lost a lot, but we actually did a pretty extensive investigation into keeping that tower, because we could save $1 million if we did that. And at the end of the day, after a lot of effort, a lot more gray hair than I had when we started, and
You kidding?
it leaked, we couldn't do it. Yeah. And Debbie lost glasses down there. I mean, we got, we had quite the adventure. Anyway, so we have no controls there now. Nothing. And we knew that going in, so we knew it had to be replaced. But the kind of the option that sort of seems like we're keeping all of our options open would be to do what was necessary, but make the new tower adaptable to accommodate the maximum raise.
But the old tower will be disassembled?
Yeah, yes, it'll be removed, but as Greg indicated, the pipes that are there would be grouted closed.
I saw that.
Right, they'll be grouted closed.
So the new one will be installed just adjacent to it and then.
Kind of down on the other side,
It's on
out of the dam itself and off on the apron a little bit.
okay, so we need a motion then?
I'll make the motion, we go with the procedure that Shinabo quoted us. Do what's necessary, but prepare for the future plan. Now, this $5.7 million is 2015,
Dollars.
so it's gonna be increased.
It might not, there might be, I don't think it'll be substantially different, because 2015 and 2017 dollars, I don't think are all that different, I don't think.
Our motion right now, though, is just to
Decide
decide
the
on
project.
which project. We don't have to put a money amount on it, because we're not allocating the only expense we're gonna be allocating tonight is, the engineering.
That would take,
Or not even for him just to give us a proposal.
he's giving us a proposal without, no matter what, and then he'll provide us with a schedule. And I think, you know, with the understanding that he'll be our design engineer, because we've already made that selection.
That's a good point you made, though, because I was under the assumption that that was the money value that we were looking at.
I think we are.
So, yeah,
I think that is.
okay.
I think it's close.
Yeah,
I mean, and as Greg keeps talking about his different levels of confidence in his classifications of his estimates, as he gets farther into the design, that number's gonna change a bit. It might go down, it might go up.
yeah, that's what
It
he.
don't ever seem to go down, but, you know, you never know.
Our motion right now is just to accept his recommendations for the project, requesting that he put together a timetable to be submitted to DEC for our approval. Well, actually, we'll be submitting it for, oh, hey, Harold is here.
Hey,
Submission to us for our approval, I would assume. He's not gonna submit it right to DEC, is he?
Good.
He's gonna submit it to us first?
oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Hello,
Hey.
yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, you got the motion now? Whatever.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm,
Trying to figure out what the motion is.
we're authorizing Schnabel to go forward with what their recommendation of the Cooper Lake Dam project is.
Yeah,
Is that-
what he recommended on his September 25th presentation.
Okay?
Which his recommendation, to be more specific, is to move forward with the regulatory requirements but to raise the intake tower to accommodate a maximum 5-foot dam raise. And the intake tower portion should be fundable through the, assuming that the $5.7 million is a pretty close estimate, 2.7 of that should be fundable through the DWSRF, if nothing else, at a low interest loan. Because that's water work,
Right.
that's not dam work.
And then for him to submit to the board the schedule
Right.
for our review and approval to
Yep.
submit to DEC.
So you figure if he does that in November, you would approve it potentially at the December meeting, and so by the first of the year, we would have submitted that to DEC. And I think that's really what they're looking for.
And then at that point in time, he's also gonna submit to us then
You'll have a
proposal,
proposal
the
by the
contract
November
for
meeting.
his, for the engineering costs.
Yeah, he apologized, he was trying to get it by tonight, and he just had some other deadline that just precluded him from doing that.
Can I figure that out then now?
Yes.
Okay. We got a motion to table, do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Okay, DOT's, Group 587 Roundabout report.
Yeah,
project.
I think after the last meeting, I spent some time looking over the estimate, and I think Bill and Jim did cursorily as well. I think Jim and I were just looking at it again, and there's no details in this estimate. I mean, there's really not. There's a lump sum for engineering, it's not broken down. You know, what's design, what's construction management, what's, you know, there's no sense that I get from this that maintenance of traffic control, they're doing that anyway. What portion is ours, what portion is the, you know, there's not enough details in this for us really to take any action, say yes or no. And the other issue is, I've never seen, in all the time I've been here, this board just like pay for something up front ahead of time, which is what they're asking us to do. So I'd like to, you know, enter into a little discussion with them about that. So I would look for you potentially to direct me to ask DOT for that kind of a breakdown, a more detailed breakdown, so that we can make some more informed decisions about which way to go and, you know, and actually start, I don't really wanna use the word negotiating, but to discuss which of, you know, if there's any room in here to make some inroads into reducing these costs. At the same time, I'd like to talk to Bernier and Larios and ask them to give us an estimate for the engineering.
Second opinion.
Well, and they're all, but, and they're local. They're very familiar with DOT regulations and doing that work. They're designing a DOT project in Woodstock right now. It just seems to me that they're the people that would be best qualified to do that work right now. And they're very familiar with the area, obviously with the area.
So you're just gonna get an estimate of what their cost would be?
To design the project.
Okay. It's not a
No
cost on
commitment.
us? No
No
commitment?
commitment, just
Okay.
here, you know,
Yeah.
here's the project. I have the maps. Give me the cost to design it and we'll come back and.
Because the end result is we can just agree as a board not to allocate any money toward this project and then work around our infrastructure in that area.
Yeah. Yes.
How complicated is that, Jody? Do we know what the impact is gonna be and the work that's required from? as far as
The
moving?
water main replacement project, the replacement in Clyde is pretty straightforward. The problem you come into is if we don't agree to, I feel like we have a gun to our head. We have no indication right now that there's anything wrong with that infrastructure, that it's performing well. But it won't be performing well after they get done with their project. Because you've got 100-year-old water mains, they're down here, they're working up here, they've got all this equipment over it. You've got the city committed to doing the sewers under us. I mean, anyway, so I would just like to see this. I'm just not comfortable this is the right numbers, that these are the real costs, especially on their end of they have a lot of soft costs in here. They've told me that they're doing this engineering in-house. This isn't like they're paying a consultant engineer to do this. With the Woodstock project, a consulting engineer is doing the design work for the DOT project. In this case, DOT engineers are doing this in-house. I think it's a lot of money to pay. You know. Anyway.
I just don't understand how they can go ahead and just design a project and not include any of this other as part of the cost of the project.
I don't disagree with you.
No, doesn't make
I mean,
sense.
DOT is paying for the other construction of the roads itself, I guess, but
Yeah. And the other
none of
issue,
the infrastructure.
their
including-
project, and Jim, jump in here if I'm incorrect, if you don't agree with me, but their project is gonna be a little easier to manage if they don't have to be careful around us. They're gonna be able to, you know, be a little more efficient in the way they do their work if they start here, do the sewer, do the water, do the road.
And I would assume then, when they start doing our part of that project, they turn the water off front and back, and we somehow reroute around.
We don't, I mean, that's part of the expense. When I provided them our requirements, I said they couldn't leave any customer without water for more than 4 hours. I mean, if you have a planned shutdown, everybody can cope with that. So that they, depending upon how the contractor sequences his work, they would have to provide temporary water for people. And that we would, you know, have to.
That's not difficult to do.
No, it's not at all. Not at all. It's just, but it's an extra cost that's included in our estimate. Yeah, we've done it, you know, on a lot of projects. And if you're cement lining pipes, people can't be, the pipes have to be empty when you do that. And so you just have to run temporary pipes and you hook them up and, but we have to be, and I made it clear that we would need to certify the disinfection and the bacterial quality of those pipes before they get put in service. Because contractors don't quite understand that all the time.
Okay, so, do you need a motion for that, or is that just something?
No, I think you just need to tell me to do that.
Go ahead and do that,
We'll
okay.
do that.
Right. Just so that, yeah, so we can report back. And then hopefully we'll have
Planning on
some.
meeting with them at all?
Yeah, the gentleman, the engineer in charge, he comes up here regularly and I don't see where that's a problem, and if we do, I'll give you a call.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He's up here routinely.
Okay, SCADA system.
As I told you at last meeting, we are, DOT has reviewed plans, they're willing to, they're ready to, DOH, I'm sorry, DOH. Brock Rogers at DOH has reviewed the plans, they're satisfactory. The only thing we need to submit before he will sign off are the elevation certificates on every location. So we have to certify that every place that we put a piece of equipment is out of the floodplain, because of the source of the funding was the storm mitigation loan fund. And there's probably 20 different sites, and Bruno Larios, the surveyors are working on that. It's just not complete yet. He's almost done. Most of the things is just a question of sitting inside and, at the computer and doing it, looking at the flood maps. A couple of places he's just gotta send the guys out and shoot some elevations. But that's, we should get that shortly.
I mean, do we anticipate any problems with?
No, as an example, we're not gonna get an elevation certificate that says the plant's out of the 100-year floodplain, because we know it's in the 100-year floodplain. But all the equipment's going on the second floor, which is well out, so that's just that kind of
Same with the
documentation.
compliance point.
Absolutely.
Compliance point is,
Compliance point, we're not really, are we doing anything there now? We're not putting anything there, are we?
No, we're just retrieving information from it.
Right, so we're just putting, instead of depending on the cell system that we have there now, we're gonna run a spectrum cable system in there. So it's just,
so like a cable will go from the compliance point,
the cable's gonna go from the pole into the building, and then it gets to the intranet. Once it's on the intranet, then it goes the same place it's going
okay.
out. It's just a different internet carrier is really what we're switching. So there's nothing, we don't need any certificates there.
Okay. And you expect that information to?
I'm hoping
By-
by the next meeting, I hope I have it. I think he's almost done with it. It's kind of the thing that they're doing on rainy days and filling between other jobs and things.
And so when do we go out to bid, and do we?
We go out to bid after, once Brock and DOH signs off on it, then we are ready to rock and roll on that, going out to bid. Debbie has been working with Spectrum. There's 3 locations where we didn't have access or reliable access to the internet. One was at Mink Hollow, one was at Cooper Lake, and the other is the compliance point. Mink Hollow's been done, Deb?
I haven't got confirmation yet.
Okay, but we think it's been done. Cooper Lake's in progress, and we just have to, I gotta talk to the town of Ulster about, how they would like us to run the line under the road or along the road. It's from our property to their property.
So Spectrum's actually ran lines right up to the Nick Hollow intake.
Yes.
Yeah, it did
Okay.
go past there just recently and we just cut a leg off.
Oh, okay.
And they're doing Mink Hollow and Cooper Lake at their cost because the line goes past.
Mhm.
And because there's about 300 feet between the last pole and the compliance point,
That's
they'll
all right.
pay $5,000 of the charge, and I think the balance for us is a little over 1,000 to run it that last little bit, so. They're gonna make their money in their monthly charges. It's okay.
Okay. Binnewater UPS installation project.
Mr. President, maybe we could get the bills
Oh, they,
approved, just so that
Sure.
we're all set, forget the bills.
Let's pop back up to presentations, bills, and accounts.
I will be accepting those accounts presented.
Second.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Thank you.
Okay, back down to Binnewater.
Okay, pre-construction meeting is next Tuesday at 1:30, right here. Binnewater's not conducive to having 5 or 6 people, there's no place to sit.
So that's gonna be
Right here,
the 19th,
well, the 17th.
17th. That's meeting with,
Meet with the design engineer, typically they run the meeting and the contractor's there. We go over things like access.
oh, there's 2 different contractors?
Well, there's one
Just-
contractor, and there's.
A race, right?
And then we had to pre-purchase the equipment.
Okay, that was the other thing.
So, and it's that coordination, really, that's what you discuss at the pre-construction meeting.
So it's really just for the electrical contractor?
Just with Jim Carey from Maurice.
Okay.
He was the low bidder. You know, how does he get in, how does he get out, you know, how, all those kinds of, what do we require in terms of pay applications, who do they go to, just those kinds of, you know, details.
And at that meeting, we'll discuss the actual time frame for installation or everything?
Yeah, I think there's some stuff he might want to do ahead of time, and I mean, I don't know, I'll know that on Tuesday, I'll find that out, and then he'll have to wait 3 or 4 weeks until the unit gets delivered, and then he can actually work on that. We've had, you know, some issues getting this contract off the ground, largely because of maybe the inexperience of the engineer with municipal work. And so I've asked Jim to come to that meeting, just so that what I miss, he'll catch.
Okay, transmission main rehab project.
Design work is underway. We finished, all the environmental work that was necessary, to get the permits we needed to do the work. And we just got the appraisal last week, Bill has it, and, between the two of us, we'll be meeting with the, property owners to see about the widened easement.
Now, the cost, if there is a cost involved with those
Easement.
additional easements, is that picked up as part of the project? No?
Yeah, well, it depends, it could be, I think. But I think it depends on, we had a set award for this, and if we can keep things within that budget, possibly. I don't think we wanna discuss what the appraisal says, because we're gonna have to negotiate with these folks, you know? But I don't think it's substantial.
But it can be, it fits within the budget of the project.
I believe so, yes.
And when do you expect the design work?
I can ask Tom, I don't know, I would imagine, you know, Deb, have you had any conversations with him about this?
No, we've been,
No, we've been frying other fish, as it were. We've been working on other projects and other things, like Filter 13.
Okay. The Lagoon sludge removal.
It's in progress. We've taken a few loads out, 3 or 4, right, Deb?
yeah, maybe 10 loads total so far. 4 loads went out today.
And how many do you anticipate? How many loads you, I mean, what, and you said there's 10 taken out, is that 10 out of 100 or 10 out of 1,000?
It's tough to tell how much water they pump over from one lagoon to the other,
Okay.
because we're continually adding to the one in service. They fill up 3 stationary tanks and then and then it goes to, then the tankers come in at their convenience and take out of the stationary tanks. We did have one truck get stuck, so we had a record there.
Which is at their expense, because we're not paying them by the hour or by the load. I mean, we're paying them by how much material we take out. So their equipment breakdowns are on them.
What happens, does it all have to be removed, every bit? Or is
It's
there
a design though.
80%?
I don't know if you can remove every last little bit, but I would say the majority in one lagoon has to be empty. It wouldn't all have to be gone, because it can't all be gone.
No, you can't get them
Yeah,
clean,
you're not gonna be able to.
remove the volume.
Yeah,
Right.
just take out
Right, well, you can.
the top.
And then once they remove the volume, what's,
And then the next step would be to have CDM come back in and look look at it, and I have a proposal for them that I forgot to put on the agenda, but we'll do it next month, for them to do a long-term remediation proposal to us for, I mean.
So they'll evaluate and give us a proposal in regards to what the
I had that
long-term
already,
solution
I
is.
just didn't, I
Okay.
forgot, since you mentioned that, it's, well, I'll put it on the agenda for next month. Send it out so everybody can have time to look at it. For them to actually propose a long-term solution. But Paul, when they get to a point where they actually can see, you know, what's down there, Paul will come back and look at it, in anticipation of us, you know, giving them the okay to do that. Because we really do need some long-term plan. Maybe the long-term plan is every 3 years we take out so much. Maybe it's we buy equipment. The real issue is the water comes in on this end, or the backwash comes in on this end, and you really need to be able to get it. It's like pushing pudding. It's kind of like pudding. It's like pushing it to the other end. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't, there's no way to get it there. I mean, believe me, they've tried everything. They've tried heavy equipment, they've tried fire hoses, I mean, we've tried a lot of different things. It's just hard to move that stuff. But there is equipment out there. There's floating pumps that will push it. There's some other technology, and maybe that's not our solution.
And you're pushing it to where? To
You have to push it to the other
the
end.
end of the lagoon?
So then you can get it to go to the freeze lagoon, where it can actually be spread and, it just, you know,
If it freezes,
so it freezes.
that's part of the problem, it's not the climate, it's
Right.
not conducive it was back 20 years ago. It's not that freeze-thaw cycle is not happening.
It never happened.
That's in global warming.
No, it never happened. You never could get the stuff from this end to that end.
And
Right.
even if you got it down there anymore,
Right. And
who
this
knows if
is,
it's gonna freeze?
oh, it will. I mean,
It
if you
will?
get it, yeah, and once it freezes, it changes chemical construction. And then you can just landfill it, you know, the solids go right, you know, it's 20% solids, it's easy. You can actually then, places have applied for beneficial use permits to land apply it, and there's a,
Or they just go in with like a front end loader or
Yeah.
something and scoop
Yeah.
it out and throw it in a dump truck and,
yeah, off you go.
It's basically inert.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's the particles you're catching in the filters up on
Right.
top. So it's got alum and particles. And then it dries out, as Judy said, when it changes the temperature, it releases the water, almost like Jell-O. And you freeze it, and then
Almost like some type
it
of
releases
like a-
itself.
pallet or something that would
Yeah.
push it or something.
Man, if you can come up with something, you can probably make some money. None of these work any place I've ever seen them. Troy ended up, and they have a lot more sludge than we have, because of the quality of their water, and they have more volume that they produce, they have more customers, because they supply a lot of their neighbors. They ended up with this flump where they push it to the other end, and then they have a belt press. They don't even bother putting it in a freeze lagoon anymore. They have a belt press like a sewer plant would have, and they dry it out, and they make a pile. And then they had a contractor who was making lawn fertilizer, or lawn soil with it as an amendment for housing projects. They had DEC permits to do that, and so that's how that was how they were going. Niagara Falls, it doesn't work. So it doesn't work there, it's not working either. And it's not that it won't freeze, but you gotta get it there and make it free, to get it over there.
Okay. Large meter audit.
They're done with that. Got some results. Had 51 meters to test. 14 of, they were only able to do 39. The majority of the ones they couldn't test had a bad valve. You need to be able to isolate the flow. So they couldn't test those. A couple of them refused to allow us to come in. But of the ones they tested, of the 39 they tested, 49 passed, and the rest were getting zero flows at low and 0 flows at medium. So, you know, I don't know, it depends on your perspective whether that was good or bad. The good news was, in many of these cases, the company that Johnson Controls brought in, M.E. Simpson, they were able to fix a lot of these meters. They open them up, they fix them, then they retest them, and then when they get done, they test it 100%. I think there's 5 or 6 that they did that with.
These
And
are all the large meters.
these are 3 and 4 inch meters, big meters, yeah.
Right. So how many did they actually test?
39?
39 of 51.
Mhm.
And. the
14
others-
passed,
How many?
14.
14 passed.
The rest
Okay.
failed to some degree or other. A full 25% of all the meters out there failed that we have. Right now, well, Jane downloaded consumption history so they can give us a better idea of what that monetary value is. And on the 5 meters, I think it's 5, that they were actually able to repair and bring back to 100% compliance, we're reading those weekly to get a real idea of what that money, that real money is. Right. So I don't know what the, Ryan just, we're only like a week and a half into that. So I don't know what that is. What, the next thing that we have to do is they got prices from the various meter vendors that we looked at. While I think it's a universal concurrence among our staff that we like the platform with census meters that we're on right now. They costed out a total meter replacement, just so we can, maybe that's not what we'll do, but that was the comparison. And we looked at Neptune meters, Badger meters, another Calstrup, which is Danish meter, it's very widely used in Europe, not so much here, but it's got a good reputation, and Census. And Neptune was the least expensive, and Census is a full $1 million more expensive. And so as much as the staff likes Census meters, $1 million is a lot of money. And so, you know, we're all realistic about that. So Johnson Controls gave everybody one list, highest and best, give us your real bottom line. I looked at the census numbers that was provided to Johnson Controls, and frankly, they gave us better numbers, like when we buy 3 or 4 meters at a clip. So they have some room that they can come down. I don't know what motivates a salesperson to do that, but I can't explain why they did it. I can't.
Oh, yeah.
No. I mean, you're in sales, that's just not what you do. Anyway. So that leads us, so we have to make a decision, because the next step would be what they call the push-pull, to go out, test a certain number of 3/4 inches, certain, and when we're doing that, they might as well put in the meters that we're ultimately gonna use.
So the medium and the small, or the intermediates, the next phase hasn't been done yet?
No,
Okay.
because they're looking at us to make a decision, and as Al and I have discussed, while $1 million is a lot of money, switching meter platforms is a big deal too, and before we do that, I'd like to bring the Neptune person back in and, you know, us kind of try it out. And, you know, I'll be honest, we listened to the presentations, and because none of us heard anything that was so wildly better, you know, we were listening, but I don't think we were ever thinking that we would go that route, that there was that kind of a big dollar differential. So now we're gonna revisit that. So we might have to slow this down a little bit till we can make, you know, a real good recommendation.
Have you been able to speak to other water companies who use Neptune?
They love them, yeah. I mean, meters are like, you like what you know. Hydrants are like that too. You know, it's like, I know, it's a kind of inside thing. I know people, Sororities as an example, they were like us. Census all the way. They were able to save a substantial amount with Neptune. They agreed it was worth it to go with Census. Census had some production issues. They ended up with Neptune. They love it. Superintendent there loves it. A lot of colleagues that have Neptune meters, the systems basically all do the same thing. It's just, it's not what we're used to. It's, you know.
Doesn't Johnson Controls have enough experience with all of these different brands, that they've got some data on reliability and...
They do, they're all good, they're all
that
good.
stuff?
They're all good, and I actually have a list of the last 1.5 years worth of meter projects I've done, not only in New York, but in the United States. and they tell you what meter manufacturer they went with. So, you know, I will certainly reach out to the Neptune folks on that list. They do. And they also, it's a given that Census is the most expensive meter on the market. That's just a given. And they're better maybe in some senses. They have a 2-watt broadcast on the radio, everybody else is a watt, so the batteries last long. There might be some advantages. It's hard to think it's $1 million.
Right. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, yes, it's a lot of money. So that's where we are with that. We haven't made any decisions. What I will be doing, and just so that you know, the folks that have the bad valves, they're gonna get a letter, they gotta get those fixed. Because that's really the customer's responsibility to have working valves.
How many have bad valves?
Oh gosh, maybe, I don't know, 14, 10, maybe 10, maybe 10?
And they're the 10,
We couldn't test.
okay, 10 of the
Yeah.
12 that you couldn't test.
Right. And then there's, I know of one in particular, if not 2, that refused us entrance, and because they said they just couldn't be without water for a half hour. And I'm prepared to send them a letter telling them that if you're a facility that can't be without water, you have to have a bypass that's metered, a metered bypass, and so we can work on it, because you just can't do that.
Yeah, what happens if the meter breaks? I mean, we're gonna have to go in and change the meter at some point in time.
Well, yeah, I mean, how do we know the meter isn't broken?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
anyway, so those 2, I will be sending those letters, so, we might get a little pushback on that, but we'll see how that goes.
So there's about 20 then of the
51.
20 of the 51 or 20 of the 39, because you really only tested 39. 14 passed and 5 were repaired, so you got 19 out of 39 that were actually within spec.
Of the 14 that passed, the balance failed, and we were able, of those that failed, we were able to repair 5 or 6.
Okay.
Of the 14.
Yes, I probably didn't say that right.
How many passed? Maybe I'm not wrong. How many?
14 passed
14 passed,
of 39,
so 25 failed.
Oh, okay.
And of the 25,
yes.
5 or 6 were repaired,
Mhm.
which brings you to somewhere around 19 or 20.
They
That
couldn't
are
be
not-
repaired, and the reason that they couldn't be repaired was that the part that needed to be repaired would exceed almost the cost of a new meter.
Okay, so we're looking at least of replacing
Those-
those 20 or so
And
meters.
next month, when I have more information from Johnson and the actual real numbers, I was on the phone with him today. And the problem is the sales guy for Census had a new grandchild and went to visit, so he's on vacation.
At some point in time, they're gonna give us a report
Yeah.
of all this in a meeting.
Well, we're just not at that point yet. I'm just kind of giving you a few milestones.
Okay.
I have their spreadsheet on all the results, and it's many columns long, but I can condense that and kind of give you the highlights at next month's meeting.
Because one of the things I asked for when we get down to it is trying to figure out if there's a difference on the age.
I have all that, yes,
Okay.
they kept all of that, so we can do that analysis, and they'd be happy to, you know.
And they'll give us an idea of how much water we're losing because X number don't work.
Right, well, and of the ones that we fixed, we're gonna know exactly how much.
Right.
And of the others, they're gonna estimate it, because they're gonna look at their consumption, we downloaded and sent them consumption history for the last 5 years.
So the ones that don't work, they know what we're losing.
They will know.
Because they had a comparable
No,
test.
no, that's
They know
been
what we're getting
Right.
on our consumption
Yeah.
reports versus what they're testing at. And they're
Correct.
saying, well, you should be getting 1,000 more gallons a day or something that you're missing. Okay.
And then you'll be able to factor in what you'll be able to save and against your cost.
Right.
And then figure out how long it's gonna take to pay for the meters.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
At what point do they make a decision about whether they're prepared to guarantee this?
That's what they're doing, that's part of what they're doing right now. They're
Were they
looking
gonna
at
be
it.
able to do that right after the large meter was done?
No,
Or
I
do
think
have
they
go
wanna
further?
see I think they've seen enough in the large meter that I got the sense that they really wanna do the push-pull smaller meters, they wanna look at that. If they had seen the large meter test and it, you know, then they would have said, you know what, Kingston, you're doing good. But they didn't do that. So I think they're ready to do the push-pull.
I know the meter in our house is working. We got a letter saying that our consumption was up. Is there a leak?
Is there?
Well, my spouse forgot to turn off the garden water for 3 days.
Oh, no.
Garden looks
You
great,
found the
though.
leak.
And then, because it was close to the house where the surpluses were,
It's in the basement.
I had water in the basement.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Harold, for the
Yeah.
increased revenue this year.
But I do know that it does work.
But if it's slow, maybe that bill should be higher.
Maybe it's-
That explains our revenues up and our expenses are
There
down
you
very
are.
good.
Has nothing to do with management.
No.
Has everything to do with Harold's leak. Yes.
So when do you think you'll be able to make a decision between Neptune and Census?
I want to see the real numbers. Not that I'm making excuses for Johnson, but Frank, who is their field guy, was hospitalized with a perforated ulcer, and so he's back on his feet. He lost 2 weeks. And John Gunn, who does all the calculations, he and his wife just had their first child yesterday, so I think he's gonna be maybe not on the money doing this for a couple of days, I'm thinking. So I would expect it, you know, a week or so, to have something from him, maybe 2 weeks. Certainly before the next meeting. And then, in the meantime, when I get the numbers, I think we'll ask the sales guy from Johnson, who only lives in Syracuse, to come on down. Maybe you guys could pass on the throughway, Syracuse to here and here to Syracuse.
Yes,
To come down and sit with us and kind of go over everything kind of slowly and one more time and see how that goes.
Okay. Correspondence?
Nothing.
Superintendent's report.
Is there some type of correction on there, Judy?
Yes, there was. I had, Dennis found this. His absence was sorely missed last month, because I had moved the headings on the top, but I hadn't moved the other. The second quarter, and part of your question, Dennis, centers on that number is very low.
Yeah, the second quarter of,
This number is very low. And it's because, for all the right, well-intentioned reasons, that is only a 70-day quarter, not a 90-day quarter. Now, that'll obviously, you know, be reflected. It'll all end up coming out in the wash at the end of the year. But, what Ryan, and you have to remember, both Ryan and Derek were very new to their positions, you know, like only since March. And I think Derek was scheduled, Ryan was scheduled to go on vacation, and he wanted to get Derek as far ahead as he could before he left. And so the quarter was a little too short. Jane picked it up right away. I mean, she, you know, what's wrong here? And that was the explanation.
so the third quarter then is back on the 90-day.
Oh, everything's back,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's looking,
Yeah.
right on this,
It's
the
all,
same of
It's all back.
production and consumption.
it's all back, and Ryan understands why that was not a really, it was well-intentioned, but it's just not a good idea.
So they take what, a daily reading, and he didn't miss 20 days of it, or?
No, what he did was, he started the quarter too soon.
Oh, okay.
So when you read, so we're reading after you've already used the water, but because he wanted to, you know, he was looking ahead, he was doing everything for the right reason, he just started reading too soon. There's sometimes when he has to, because Derek is as good as Ryan was on, wouldn't you say, Al, he's as good as Ryan is in terms of the speed at which they read?
Yes.
So, in theory, they finish most quarters, there's a couple of weeks every quarter where they do other stuff. They either catch up on service work, or, you know, they work with the crew The other crew, I mean, they're always busy, but they just can't, you can't start reading the quarter early because it just
Yeah, it throws
throws
everything
everything
off.
off. Right. So,
Okay. So I need, I guess, a motion to accept superintendent's report.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Okay. Those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Executive session?
no. Just, not an executive session, just so everybody knows, we talked about hiring the MEO several months ago. The applications are due the end of next week for a CDL driver. It's out on the city's website, it's on Civil Services Facebook page, it's on our Facebook page. And that's for you if you'd like it.
Okay.
Everybody, and Joanne, I have one I have to get you. It's our annual audit report for 2016.
Before we go, filter 13, you mentioned that before, how you're spending a lot of time.
No, I'm not spending any time. Debbie's thoroughly immersed in this. Debbie, the Reader's Digest version is that there's nothing wrong with the air scour system.
There may be a setting that's too sensitive on the outlet of the blower. It has an automatic shutdown for pressure. It reaches 5.5 pounds and it shuts down to protect the motor of the blower. So we're tripping out on one filter, there's extra resistance in there, and we looked for the reason. In July, we back flushed water backwards through the nozzles and we got some sand out. And we thought the same problem was coming back. And it turned out to be not the same problem, just the settings are drifting on the sensors, or there's a problem with the blower. OCS is trying to get a hold of the blower manufacturer to come up and recalibrate.
And Tom is involved. OCS has been very responsive.
Yes.
Roberts has come in finally. They're having some staffing issues, but I think that's resolved. We got Don and Dave both back.
Yeah.
They are in agreement. Tom has redone the calculations to, show what's the, crack point on certain things, and I think we'll get to the solution. It's just a question of getting everybody, all the pieces in place. I think she's made a tremendous amount of progress.
There's only
Chasing
one out
down-
of 16.
Right.
The other 15 are working okay.
Yeah, we think so. We had some problems, but that may be a staff issue.
Okay.
We may have solved that for good.
Who's not there anymore? No. Debbie's been, these are a lot of tiny little minute details, and she's been on them all the way through.
Okay, thank you.
All right, question.
Yeah.
The house that's on Cooper Lake, is it vacant?
No. But it needs to be.
So there's still somebody there yet?
I will do that. That absolutely has to happen before we start construction.
Anything else? For the board, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay.